All right, so in this section we are going to talk about some of the major events that essentially led to the decision for us to break away from Great Britain. You'll also consider how new state governments were established as we became an independent nation. So some of the early attempts for unity in the Americas, first and foremost, was with the New England Confederation. Confederation just meaning a joining of several groups for a common purpose, and in this case it was the colonies. This was also known as the League of Friendship, and it was formed in order to defend against Native Americans. It lasted about 40 years, ended up dissolving and losing importance in 1684. Albany Plan. Ben Franklin designed the plan for annual Congress with delegates from all 13 colonies. Some of the powers that were included: raising military, naval forces, making war or peace, regulating trade and tax. Franklin's plan was not supported by the colonies or the Crown, but would later be a platform for later actions. And if you look at the image there to the right, you can see that it is of a snake, and it is chopped up into smaller pieces. It says join or die. And with this image, it was tied to the Albany Plan, and it was used to try to convince the colonies to unite. And if they did not make that decision, then it could cost them their lives, or cost the Americas their land. First Continental Congress. So to start us off, let's talk a little bit about the Stamp Act. It was an act that was put in place in 1765, and it put taxes on all legal documents, newspapers. So this was a tax that Great Britain put on American colonists, and it really angered them. So in 1774, Parliament passed yet another set of laws, this time to punish the colonists for the trouble that they had caused in Boston with the Boston Tea Party. And this was called the Intolerable Acts. So if we think back to the Boston Tea Party, essentially the colonists dumped cargoes of tea into the ocean. Now, why did they dump tea into the ocean? Well, they wanted to demonstrate their resolve to not let British goods be sold in the colonies. Again, they were angry, and they were rebelling in protesting against the Stamp Act, and essentially that's why the Intolerable Acts were put in place. Great Britain was intolerable of the actions of the colonists. First Continental Congress discussed the worsening situation and debated plans for action on September 5th, 1774. They also sent a Declaration of Rights to King George III, protesting Britain's colonial policies of rising taxes and regulating trade. So with the Declaration of Rights, this was kind of our first warning that said, hey, either you lessen these taxes, or we are going to consider separating from you. So it was kind of a warning, and the king did not take it very seriously. Delegates then urged colonies to refuse trade with England until they halted taxes and trade regulations were repealed. All right, Second Continental Congress. England responded to the Declaration of Rights with stronger repressive measures. May 10th, 1775. What had begun? If you thought American Revolution, you are correct. Before the Second Continental Congress met, the Battle of Lexington and Concord had been fought. All 13 colonies had sent representatives and chose George Washington to be the commander-in-chief. This Second Continental Congress acted illegally in the eyes of the British government and acted as the colonial government without a constitution. Second Continental Congress, by force of circumstance, became the nation's first national government with no constitution yet. The Declaration of Independence was written in July 1776, and the Articles of Confederation was written on March 1st, 1781. And then later on, our Constitution would be written September 17th, 1787. We're actually going to celebrate it on September 15th in class on Friday. All right, Declaration of Independence announced that the 13 American colonies, then at war with the Kingdom of Great Britain, regarded themselves as the 13 newly independent sovereign states and no longer under British rule. July 2nd, 1776, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, and John Adams drafted and wrote the Declaration of Independence. On July 4th, it was adopted, the Declaration of Independence, proclaiming the existence of a new nation. And we are going to be doing some additional work with the Declaration of Independence here soon. All right, so I just want to read through a portion of the Declaration of Independence from July 4th, 1776. It reads, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights." An unalienable right just meaning life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So just implying that they have powers, and those powers are coming from the people. The people are essentially a part of the government and have a say. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. And this idea comes from John Locke, and it's called the social contract. And essentially it is a contract that the government has with the people. And if the contract is broken, so if the government does not provide for the people or protect their basic freedoms, then essentially John Locke believed that they have a right to abolish it or alter it, and that is what is being said here. And to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So you can see that throughout this document there are several Enlightenment ideas, especially those of John Locke, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, although he said life, liberty, and property. Consent of the governed is included in here. And then also that social contract. And in that last part there where it says, as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness, this is just referring to us having the right to organize the government in a way that will promote happiness and safety. So basically this document then is explaining that we have unalienable rights, that our government should be of the people, meaning the people should be the main source of power. We should have a say. And then essentially at the end there, the social contract. If the government's not doing what it said it was going to do and it's become destructive, as Great Britain's government had become destructive towards the American colonies, then the American colonies have the right to alter or abolish it. And so that's basically their declaration. We are separating from you, Great Britain, and war will continue because the American Revolutionary War had begun before July 4, 1776, and then even continued after this declaration was written. All right, so drafting state constitutions. Congress urged each of the colonies to adopt such governments as shall, in the opinion of the representatives of people, best conduce the happiness and safety of their constituents. So again, create a government that is chosen by the people and that will promote happiness and safety for their people. Assemblies and conventions were commonly used to draft and then adopt these new documents. So constitutional conventions. Massachusetts had the oldest present-day state constitution in 1780 in the world. Okay, similar features in state constitutions that we see. Popular sovereignty. A government existed only with the consent of the governed, that the people have a say in that government. Limited government, that the government is limited in its powers. This essentially takes some of the power away from the government and gives it back to the people, protects their rights. Civil rights, liberty or freedom. Separation of powers, so that's going to be like our three branches of government: executive, judicial, and legislative. Checks and balances, which is just that system, again, that checks each branch to make sure it doesn't become too powerful, to make sure no one branch is abusing its power. And if it is, then that other branch can check it and bring it back down so that they're on the same level. Most power with legislatures, okay, or our House of Representatives and Congress. And then governors were given little power. Memories were fresh with the king's power. So they were hesitant to give too much power to the governor because they did not want to see any state constitution or state government form into a monarchy or absolute monarchy like they had witnessed with the king.